Forms and surveys inside of Go High Level are more than just data collectors. When done right, they can qualify your lead and set your entire sales process up for success. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build forms and surveys that drive results. I'm Catherine Ferris, owner of Marketex and Marketex Engine, and today I'm talking about forms and surveys within High Level. These are a critical piece of the high-level infrastructure. Without good forms, you're not collecting good data. And with surveys, you can get deeper information from your contact. I have seen some people struggle with how to build these and how to build them properly, what sort of information to collect. And then there's the naming conventions and some other nuances within the settings, as well as just making them look good. Today, I figured I would go into a deep dive specifically on forms and surveys just to make sure we've got all of our bases covered and we all know how to make beautiful forms that work. All right, here we are inside of High Level, or better yet, our version called Marketex Engine, where we can actually build out pre-designed templates, workflows, and such for our client. Here in High Level, you have the menu over on the left-hand side. To find our forms, we're actually going to go to Sites. Under Sites, you can see there's a whole list of options across the top. One of them is forms, one of them is surveys, and those are the two things that we're going to be digging into today. So when I click on forms, it's going to instantly bring me to the form builder. Now, this is a demo account. I have lots of things built out in here, some way better than others, so we're going to play around a little bit. Now, in a previous video, I built an entire lead funnel process, and I'm actually going to build off of this form I did in that other video. All right, we have our lead funnel 1 form, and you can see that there's some formatting and some things here, but because today we're doing a deep dive, I'm going to go into each and every piece of how to make this form look like this or better. All right, let's start over here up on the left-hand side. We have a little plus. This is Add Form Elements, and this is the window that was actually open when I first came into the form. There are drag and drop options. You bring them over and you can see where it's going to be placed here on the form. You have the option of would you like full name, or there's first and last name separately, which is what I typically do because I like to make the first name required and the last name optional. Again, these are your forms. You can build these however you would like, but you can drag and drop. Anytime you have an element here, you can easily delete it by hovering over it and deleting with the blue trash can. All right, we have some predefined quick add items. Like I said, full name, first name, last name. We could put in date of birth, phone number, which we already have on here. Email address is a key element. It is one of the identifiers in the system, so you almost always want to have that in here. There are some ways to hide that or exclude that if you truly wanted to, but for most purposes, when we're building a form, you want to make sure you have email. Then we have buttons. You can add products. If you've pre-built products in the system already, you can collect payments right here on your forms. Address and website, organization, or you might call it company. This is another one that's pretty common and already pre-built. Then you have some text options, drop downs. These are ones you can customize a little bit, and I'm going to talk about customizing these fields in a minute. If you create a ton of custom fields, it can create a little bit of confusion on the back end because this is also a full CRM. In addition, you could drop text right in the middle here. I have a text block up the top, but let's say in the middle I wanted to add some instructions. I can add those there. And you have all the options of formatting these. So you could set it as a different type of heading or just a paragraph, make it bold, italic, strike through, anything you want to do with those settings. You can also change the type of text, the size of the text, the weight of the text with these settings here. And you're going to notice this right-hand panel is the formatting all throughout our forms, but I can move it around, and that's all done through this formatting section when I've highlighted the actual field that I want. I can give this a border and a particular border color. I can also give it a background color just on that section. I did pick a 3-point and a red. If you notice, that actually is not showing up yet, and part of that is because of the next piece where you have to pick what kind of border you want. And again, you're going to see this all throughout the form settings where you can pick solid, dotted, dashed. This is how you could build something that looked like a coupon or a coupon code right in the middle where it has that dotted line effect, which you're also seeing on the outside of my form. So there are a lot more here too. We can add shadows and decide how far you want that shadow to go. You can see right now I have a shadow around the outside of my entire form. You can actually do it on this particular section. So I am going to clean this up. All right, so I've reset all my settings on that particular field. But what you will see is on each one of these fields, you'll notice this little settings option, the settings pane over on the right-hand side, and you can turn that on and off. Here, you can open different settings options. We're in the text box for our full name, and we can choose to have the label alignment to the side or to the top. We can change the name here. If you don't want it to say full name, you could have it say name, and that's in the placeholder, which is what shows up in the middle here. You could have the top also just say name. This short label, you can see where that shows up there right underneath if you want to give some sort of description of your field and what you're looking for. Right now we have this field set to 100% width. We could take that down to 50% width. You can choose whether it's required and whether it's hidden. I will discuss cases where you might hide a field like this. In that case, you would use something called sticky contacts if the name or email is hidden. And I'll show you where that setting is. So we're going to change this back to 100%. All of our fields have these types of options on the right-hand side. Each one, when you click on it, has a different variety of options that you can customize. You've got your label alignments, placeholders, query key. In this case, where this is phone number, you have the option of adding the country, and you can validate the phone number if you would like. On your consent box, this is probably one you're going to have some standard wording for that you're going to put on every form you create. You would have something that says, yes, we can email you. Yes, we can text you, whatever it is that you're doing for regular marketing activities. Often this would be required when somebody is filling out your forms. The other thing that we've started making a required field on all of our forms is the state. This has to do with some new laws that just passed in Texas around SMS regulations. Now we want to be able to identify everyone that is actually in Texas at the moment, and other states might follow suit. I have another video on that you're welcome to watch, but this would be another field that we would typically add to our forms. As these forms start getting a little bit longer and you have more information, we might want to change the layout a little bit. This style and layout options over here on the right, if we click this, you'll see some overarching layout options for our forms. So under layout, right now we're in a single column. If I change this to 2-column, you can see how this looks. Now company clearly should be up here, and we can just drag and drop to move things around. If you did have a very simple form that was just name and email, that might be the version that you would want to do single line. With this many fields, it doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to keep it at least a 2-column. Makes it readable having 2 lines, especially if you had like first name, last name, phone, email, company, title, and then maybe state and something else. You can see how that all kind of lines up pretty good. Next, you can see some additional options here. Would you like box or line? How wide do you want your form? We can make this much wider, but it will streamline down and you're able to see the difference here on mobile as well as desktop. If you just want the desktop to be wider, you can set that. I'm going to take this back down to my 650, which is a little more normal. My field spacing, let's just bump this up so you can see what that does versus taking it down. Then padding. Padding is important almost everywhere when you're doing design work. Whether it's on a form or a web page, padding can really make the difference of whether something is readable or not. Margins are outside of the form, padding is inside, and you'll see when I go from 30 to 100 what that does. So you can see where the padding is showing up there. If your forms are embedded on a web page or a pop-up, you want your padding to be pretty small so it doesn't take up valuable space around the edges and crunch your form in. You can go all the way down to 0, right to the edges, if you know that you're putting it in a pop-up screen that's going to have a little padding on its own. Sometimes I like to at least have something in here, but certainly don't need 60 and 30. We can drop these down quite a bit. But if you were just going to use the link directly to the form, you may want more padding. You may want to have it not be quite so close to the edges. And with this dotted line border, I probably would have more padding around the edges again so that it's not right up to these edges. It looks a little bit funny. We can choose whether we're going to show the labels or not. That takes up a lot less room if you were really trying to make your form shorter because you had a lot of fields. Another option is to add some images to your form. If you're going to use the direct link and you're not embedding this on a web page, here's how you can make it look a little bit prettier. We'll just grab a random image to drop in the background so you can see what this is going to look like. So that's the actual background. And then you've got a header image option. We'll grab a logo for that because that would be typical. If you wanted to drop your logo inside the form, you would come over to this quick add section, come down to other elements, and there's an image here. Drop that in, and now we can choose our logo. So that's what that looks like when we choose our logo here. We can center it, give it alt text. We can actually say, how wide do we want this? Going back to our overall form settings, you can see 3 different options across the top for your overall form settings. We made it all the way down here to miscellaneous. The last item here is whether you want the agency branding on there or not. And that's just that little Marketex engine. In my case, where it's my agency, I'd be happy to have it on there. In your case, you may not want to keep it. Next, we're going to go over to themes. These are pre-built themes if you don't want to build something from scratch. Before I test these out, I'm going to save my changes. One thing worth noting is that you have undo buttons or arrows here up at the top. You also have version control. So I can see my different versions and when they were last updated. This is my current version. Now I want to take a look at some of those pre-built themes. Let's say I'm going to use this blue texture theme. I get this alert saying that it's going to modify my style. I'm going to proceed. And you can see how that changed it pretty quickly. Brand new look and feel to it, and it is formatted. It's ready to go. You can use these themes right out of the gate. I can try a different theme, this theme here, and you can see how the rounding of the boxes has changed. The fonts have changed. If you do have a colored background on here, that is easy enough to just set to transparent if that's what you want. And then you would make the font color white. This one has a font color that's a little bit off, and then the background can be transparent. And then that will fix how that looks as well if you want a black background. All right, again, I'm going to save my changes. And then I was able to use my version control to go back and pick a different version of my form and get my original form style back. So we covered styles, we covered themes, we've covered how to edit your individual fields and how to add fields. Now let's take a quick look at some of the advanced options. In the advanced options, it goes through all the different parts and pieces of your form. You've got the overall form. This is where you can see I have my red 3-point border. I do have a little bit of corner radius on here, and you can see what that looks like to add more, how it rounds the corners out. This is where I have my dashed border. I could change it to dot, solid, or get rid of it altogether. Then I've got my shadow. This is where I pick my shadow color and transparency. I always like to set them very dark and mostly transparent. I think that has the best look. Then you can do the vertical and horizontal and the blur and the spread. If I were to increase these quite a bit, you can see that blur kind of brings it way back out versus bringing it in. I like the larger blur. The spread, we could make it less so it's a little bit closer if we wanted to, or we can bring it way out. And then the vertical and horizontal is the up and down, right and left. How far does it go? Is it more to one side than the other? So those are the advanced form styles. Then you've got your input fields. So you've got your font color. If we change this, you've got your border width. We can set this much higher. You can see what that difference looks like. Corner radius here as well, if you wanted to make them more rounded. And this goes into your branding. Do the buttons on your website, are they rounded corners, slightly rounded, actual pill form like this, or are they squared off? You probably want to have your forms have a similar look. We could take this down to 800. 500 even. Do you want dotted or dashed borders on there? Again, no borders. That's the same as taking this down to 0. And then you have padding around each one of your items. We could take this all the way down or go all the way up. That would look kind of weird when people are filling it in, but right around 20 looks about right. 15 to 20 is what it started with. Then you could add shadow colors, but you'll notice all of these are set to 0, so it doesn't actually work yet. I have to change these so that you can see them. Next, we get to labels. If we change this color, you'll see that these are changed bright blue. Make them whatever brand color you might have. You can actually put your hex codes right in here, as you can with any part of the system where your color codes are. You can change your font family here so that it matches your brand fonts. You can change the size. You can change the weight. Maybe your brand font is a very thin weight, or maybe it's a very bold weight, but you can control all of that. The short labels, these are the little descriptions that were underneath. You have full control of how those look as well. Your placeholder, this is the font inside. We could change these, make them really stand out. If you were getting rid of these labels, you might want to make these a little bolder, stand out a little bit more. You do have the option of adding custom CSS. People do some fun things with custom coding on their forms. We're not going to cover that today, but you do find it under advanced custom CSS. As I mentioned, you have undo buttons. So we're just going to click undo on a couple of these things that we did, and we can see that it brings our form back a little more normal looking. I want to save my changes. All right, I think the only thing I didn't edit here was the actual button itself. And there are themes for your buttons. You do not have to completely design these from scratch, but you certainly can. You can choose what the button says, just retype it here. You can, again, choose the font family, the size and the weight. You can give subtext, and then you can choose all the way that that looks as well. Then you have alignment. Is it going to be centered? You have the colors and background. So right now, my button background is actually a custom branded color. We have the text color, and you can see that testing text is not white, so we'll fix that. Then you could give it a border. Remember, you have to get a color and a width if you want to give it a border that you're actually going to be able to see. So I gave it color. And then one more thing, what style do you want? Do you want it solid or dashed? Next, we have padding. You can see here where you can add more or less. We could bring this right down to the edge, and this is the padding within the button. If you wanted to add spacing outside, that would be a margin. And in this case, we can't necessarily do that, but that's what the difference is when you're talking about buttons. And then we can add a shadow. And I tend to like to do a dark color here, but make it very transparent. And then we're going to bring this out here, and you can see when I click away that this button now has a shadow and a red border, so I will get rid of it. All right, so we've gone through and customized all the different fields on our form. The thing that I had talked about several times throughout, but we did not do, is the custom fields. And when you create a new field, it's going to save as part of this form. So we've got our quick add, and then you'll notice we've got our custom fields. I have created a few custom fields within this system, and I saved them all under additional info. I want you to see what happens, how I can reuse these. For example, contact form, I have your message. So I can reuse this. So we're going to do another multi-line. I'm going to drag it over. And when I do, you can see here that it has this funny name. I'm going to type in message. This will not get saved until I save my form. So I am going to save, and then under advanced settings, you're seeing a unique key here, unique for each field. If I go to my message, it's contact your message. This one is saved right now as unique key your message. So that's the actual unique key that we're looking for on every field that we create. Now, when I go to my custom fields, you can see there's a new section. This is the Lead Funnel 1 form, and there is a new section here for Lead Funnel 1, and it has my message field. This will now be available on any form that I create, and it will also be a new section within my contact records. It will be called Form Lead Funnel 1, and the only information in there will be the results of this message field. So you can see that if you were building a survey or a form with lots of custom fields and not reusing other custom fields, it could get confusing. Or if you wanted separate forms for two different audiences and you were reusing the same fields, it would also not be exactly what you were looking for. If you had one set of forms for lawyers and another set of forms for doctors, and you wanted to keep those completely separate in the contact records, a section that lawyers filled out and a section that doctors filled out, you would want to have duplicates of these custom fields. But if you didn't, that's where you want to make sure you're reusing. And we can clean these up after in the custom fields section. Keep in mind, whatever your label is what that unique key will become when you hit save. You can only have one unique key for each field. Okay, so I believe that's all the context around building a form, as well as formatting your fields, formatting your forms, and then the nuance of having those new custom fields created every time you create a custom option in here. And your custom options could be drop downs, checkboxes, radials, ratings. The one that we put in here was a multi-line text. There's a single line text. There's a list. So there's lots of options that you could put in here that are going to create these custom fields. Something else I do like to add to most of my forms is also a reCAPTCHA. I'm interrupting this video to make sure that there is no confusion about High Level or about how to work with me. If you want to try High Level but don't want to waste months trying to figure it out, I have two very clear options for you to consider. If you're looking to build an agency or a SaaS business, head over to marketex.com/highlevel. By using our affiliate link, which costs you nothing, you will get the following bonuses. Our Marketex Engine Core Snapshot. This is all of the features that we install in every new Marketex Engine user account, and we're giving it to you for free as an affiliate. Our onboarding guides and access to our private community. An invitation to join our weekly live office hours, where I personally will answer questions and even share tips that I've learned throughout the week. And I'm constantly learning. There is so many new features and things to learn in this industry as a whole, not to mention within the High Level platform. Plus, we'll give you our additional templates, checklists, and migration guide. That's option number one. Option two is if you are a business owner just looking to improve your own tech stack and you don't want to do it alone. You would like a trusted strategic partner in your corner that speaks the language, brings you time-tested automations, proven strategies, and up-to-date learning. Then go to marketexengine.com and book a consultation with me to learn more about our high-level agency, Marketex Engine, and joining our ecosystem. I'm also currently offering discounts on one-on-one consulting to any of our affiliates and high-level users. So whether you're building an agency or building a business, pick your path and let's drive results. Now, back to your regularly scheduled programming. All right, so now we're going to move over and look at settings. We have a couple different options here. We have on submit, meaning after somebody submits, what's going to happen. They could just get a message. This is not uncommon. They get a message that says, thank you for submitting this form. Please check your email for next steps. This allows you to make sure that their email address is correct. It makes them go and check their email and hopefully mark your email as safe. The other options here are that you could send them directly to a different URL, maybe a thank you page, whatever they're requesting, or your calendar. If there's an order built into this form, you could send them to an order confirmation. You can style this message with similar styling to what we saw in our form. You can put your Facebook Pixel ID in here, and this drives the Pixel events. If they land on the form, they're getting a page view event. Once they complete the form, it's completed submission. If you have a payment being collected on that form, you might want to say that this was a purchase instead of just a completed registration. Or maybe you want to call them a lead once they complete this form. One of the things I mentioned before was sticky contacts. And this is where the system will autofill the details of the form based on the IP address of the person filling it out. If someone is already in your system and they come to your form, they won't have to put their name and email address. Where this can get difficult is if you have multiple people using the same computer or they're in the same household or office. This can also be a problem if you're using forms internally. For example, we build forms to add new contacts to the system. It's really more of an internal form. So we wouldn't want to have sticky contact on those cases because this is internal team members filling out the information. We wouldn't want it to override their information because it's not coming from the right computer. If anyone other than the exact contact will be filling out this form or could potentially be filling out this form, I would leave sticky contact off. We have run into issues where contacts get confused in the system because someone else filled out the form with a different email address, or it changes the primary email address because you went in and filled it out with your backup email address because you were testing the form. We've run into issues with this, even though it sounds like it might be a good idea for convenience. Enabling time zones, we usually keep that on. If you're in the EU, you might want the GDPR compliant information, or if you're doing a lot of business with people in the EU. Finally, we have submissions across the top, and this is just where you're going to see the people that have filled out the form and be able to see the data that came in. Now, I am going to go back to edit for a minute because one other item I didn't address is next to the add form elements, you have a conditional logic option. So you can decide based on certain ways that people are filling out the form to redirect to a certain URL, disqualify leads automatically, hide and show fields, and display custom messages. Hide the company field, for example. If they say that they're a lawyer, hide the size of your email list field. If they say that they're a doctor, hide or show the size of your practice field. Same with redirecting, depending on how they fill something out. If they're a lawyer, you go to a certain thank you page. If they're a doctor, you go to a different thank you page. If they give you a phone number, you go to one page. If they don't, you go to a different page. Maybe you have a question on there about how willing they are to invest. So if they answer that question as a 5 or below, maybe you send them to a page that says, thank you so much for your interest. If it's a 6 or above, maybe you send them to a page with your calendar. That's a way to automatically disqualify leads. I actually did a whole video about our gatekeeper process for your calendar, and that kind of falls into that category. All right, so that is conditional logic. Next up, we have notification. There's two places you could really set up notification settings. If you're building a workflow goes along with your form, you might want to put the notification in there so that all of your messaging is in one place and you don't have to wonder if it's turned on or not. If you want to know who opted in or who has been added to the system, then this email notification is a good way to do this quickly and not have to build a workflow. This is the subject line that will come to your email, so you want to name it whatever is going to identify this really easily for you. You can say who you want this to go to. You would type in the email address and hit enter. They give you a little screen tip here that you can actually have the reply to be this little piece of code that will make it their email address. Whatever email they put in here will be the reply to email, which is nice. Sometimes I will add the name here as well, so that when it comes into my email, I can see the name right up front. And then if I wanted to do a quick reply, I can just hit reply right from my email. You can also do an autoresponder back to the person that filled out the form if you need to. If you're not going to build a full workflow on the back end, this could be useful for just a one message response. If you are going to build a full workflow on the back end, I probably wouldn't use these notification options. I would build all of this in the workflow itself, just so that all the messaging is together. All right, so we have a preview option. We can do a quick preview of our form, and this is what it looks like. Then we have an integrate option. And I get questions about this quite often. How do I use these forms? Well, if you're building a funnel within HighLevel, you can actually just choose from a list of all your forms to put that right on the pop-up or right on the page, wherever you want. But let's say you have a WordPress website. That is where you're going to want this embed code or the share link. Those are going to be the two most common that we use. You would decide which style you want. And when you hover over, you get screen tips that help you understand what these styles mean. The polite slide in is interesting. You can build a pop-up or have it inline. When is it going to show up? On a scroll after a certain number of seconds, or always. If you're building a landing page that just has a form in the middle or at the top, you want the always show, not show after scroll or after a certain amount of time. Is it going to be active after a certain number of visits, always active, and then deactivation options. And then once you've decided on all of your settings, you're going to copy this embed code. From there, you go to your website, you go to the editor on your page, and you put that embed code either in a code block, or if you're on the code editor side of the page builder, drop it in there, and you should see your form right on the page. The other option would be to put in a button that says, click here to register. And when they click on that button, they go to this link. You grab this link and you just put it behind a button, and then you can use it anywhere you want. All right, so we have formatted, checked out the settings, looked at the integrations, previewed, and that is how you build a form in HighLevel. Now, I wanted to cover the difference between forms and surveys. When we were in forms, we were in the builder. We also have the analyzer where you can see what your results are for your forms, views, responses, average time. I am in a demo account, so you're not going to see anything there. And then overall submissions, and you can choose which form you want to look at. We also had submissions within the form itself. All right, so let's take a quick look at surveys. Within surveys, we have the same sort of options: builder, analyze, submission. I don't have a survey built yet. So when we come in here, we get these templates and different examples. You would get the same if you were building your first form. Click create new. One of the big things you're going to notice that's different about surveys, when we first open this looks a lot like forms. This does not look much different except for these cards. This is probably one of the biggest differences. When we look here on the side, when we open style and options, instead of having the single line, two line, inline options, we now have one question at a time or many questions at a time with these slides and these cards. And this is how you can put things on multiple pages, which you can't really do with a form. So if you have a lot of questions, maybe you want to build it as a survey if you want this to go through multiple pages and you don't want it to be obvious that there's going to be 5 pages of questions. This is how you could make it look simpler. But outside of that, all of your settings, your custom fields are very similar. So you have your layout, you can do your footer here, sticky to the card, sticky to the page. Now it's dropped down to the bottom. You can show progress or not. Maybe you don't want them to know that there's 5 cards, 5 different slides. You can change your background colors, font weights, sizes. Again, if I turn on the progress bars, only going to work if you do sticky to page. You have options for your text and arrows. We need to add another slide. Now we have another slide and we can see text and arrow versus text only or arrow only. You can change this to be whatever word you want at the end. We have colors and backgrounds, just like our forms. We have miscellaneous items where you can turn on that agency branding if you wanted. Themes, very similar to forms. They even look very similar to forms. We can choose whatever theme we want, so you don't have to spend a ton of time building this. And we can do border styles just like we could with our forms. See, all of these choices look very similar with just the extra footer information because we do have this footer piece on these slides. One of the things that I like to do is here on the settings, I don't love it when it says slide 1, slide 2. I would either give this a meaningful name or just take it off altogether. I typically do this on all of my slides for my surveys. Just like our forms, we drag and drop the information we're looking for. Right now, we have it set up for 1 question per slide, so we can change it to many at a time, and you'll see how they'll clump together. If I look at my custom fields, one of the things you'll notice is that form field from my lead funnel is here as well. Every time you make a custom field for something specific, it's going to show up here in custom fields. You want to remember what you have and look for those fields you already have before creating new ones. And you cannot make more than one field with exactly the name. All right, so I have nothing on this first slide, so we're going to delete it. We're going to change the name or get rid of the name, and then maybe we'll even duplicate this. Now, when I duplicated it, it did not bring the name, email, and last name over, and it created a new message. If you look, the unique key is now going to be message copy. And now I'm going to save. I now have message and message copy as a new field. So again, getting back to what I was saying about being careful that you don't keep making custom fields that are exactly the same as ones you already have. Your message, open a URL or order confirmation. You can style your message, Facebook settings. Then you have a couple different options here. So you still have your sticky contact and time zone and GDPR, but you have a scroll to the top option, auto navigation, and create contact on partial submission. So this is an interesting one because it does just what it says. It creates a contact when the user clicks. If you put your name, email, and phone number or other contact information on the first slide, as soon as they click next, it will create that contact. They don't have to finish the entire survey. The same thing happens when you create 2-step order forms. If you have contact information first and then add product or the purchase information, you can create a contact even if they didn't finish the purchase, which allows you to then potentially message them saying, hey, abandoned cart, we noticed you didn't finish your purchase or survey. I'm going to save those settings. And then we can do a quick preview of this survey. You can see here, name and email info, and I can't proceed because I didn't put my email address in. If I go back to edit, you'll notice the conditional logic, very similar, just an extra jump to because of the specific slides. You've got an email notification and autoresponder, same as on your forms. The real differentiator is the fact that you can have multiple slides with your surveys instead of one form. Now I'm going to go back out to my list of surveys and forms. Because I've been trying to drive this point home about making custom fields, I'm going to go into contacts and show you what that looks like and what that did when we created those custom fields. So now when I go into a test record, I have my regular contact information. Look here, I now have form lead funnel 1 as a whole section in my contact record, and message is a part of that. That's that new field that I created in my form. This is the process that I have seen people create forms with tons of custom fields and not realize they were connected to other pieces within High Level. Because it is such an integrated system, it's not just a form builder standing on its own, it's a full CRM. And you want that information to be connected. When somebody gives you that information, fills out that survey, fills out that form, it's great that it comes into the contact record and then it's part of the CRM. But you also have to think about that when you're building your forms and where that information is going to show up. I did a whole video about navigating the contact fields and where to edit these. If you go to settings and custom fields, this is where you're going to find that lead funnel folder we created because we created those 2 extra custom fields in that form. It automatically created a folder and put those 2 fields in that folder. Here is where you can edit them, you can rename them, you can move them to a different folder so that they're not here on their own, they're part of another section. This is where you can manipulate that information. Hopefully you found that information valuable. Hopefully that will help you the next time you build a form or a survey. And hopefully you can also clean up any forms or surveys that have gotten a little out of control. In addition to the standard formatting and all the fields that we can create, there's also some advanced features with UTM settings within your links to track your sources and creating net promoter score surveys so that you can actually track the information with your clients and get feedback to segment customers. Think beyond just the traditional forms, name, email, phone number. Think about how you can use forms to improve your lead generation, to improve the data and information you're collecting in the system to help your sales process. Think outside the box when it comes to creating forms. I hope you will take a look in the description to get more information about Marketex Engine, about High Level and our affiliate bonuses, as well as upcoming webinars and lead magnets. Please like, share, and comment.